Could South Carolina get rid of their spring game to avoid potential losses in the portal? We talk about it next. It seems a weird concept, but it's happening in college football from big-name programs. We talk about all that and more. Locked on Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked on Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked on Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. Hope everyone's having a fantastic Tuesday night as we're recording this, and we've got a good show for you. I appreciate you guys joining, and hope everyone had a fantastic day. Like I said, thank you to everyone that's watching and listening, and thank you to everyone who's making Locked on Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. You guys have heard me talk about them before. You'll hear me talk about them again. Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, all capital letters, for $20 off your first purchase. Let's get into the day's show. Now, here's the question I want to talk about. Make sure I'm not shaking the camera violently here. Could South Carolina be a program that follows suit with a couple of other programs who are going to stop playing a spring game altogether for various reasons? But would South Carolina follow suit? And the main reason why is to avoid people poaching your players in the portal. Does that make sense? Now, right off the bat, I do not think that South Carolina is a program that would do that for a number of reasons, but we're seeing it happen in major college football. Case in point, this past weekend, Matt Rhule from Nebraska came out and said, listen, they asked about the spring game. Now, the spring game in Nebraska is a big deal. We'll get to that in a second. He brought up the point, somebody said, will Nebraska have a spring game this year? Because they had not announced the spring game date yet. Most programs have already done that. It's usually between the second, third, fourth week in April for almost every major program across the country. He said, probably not. And then he elaborated on the reason why they were not going to do it. And I want to pull it up, make sure I have the exact quote so I don't misquote him. He said, the word tampering doesn't exist anymore. It's just an absolute free, open, common market. I don't necessarily want to open up the outside world and have people watch our guys and say, hey, he looks like a pretty good player. Let's go get him. So the question is, will we see other teams follow suit? And is South Carolina going to be one of those teams? Yes and no. I think you are going to see other teams do this. And you're also going to start seeing this because it's an easy scapegoat, too, of what are the benefits of the spring game. Now, let me give you my full 10,000-foot scope on this thing, okay? For Nebraska, when I saw this, I was like, holy blank, that's a really big deal. It may not sound like a big deal because it's a spring game, but for a place like Nebraska, it's a very big deal. This is quoted from people in the program, the athletic department at Nebraska, that have said this is a very big revenue generator for us. Those are the exact two words they use, revenue generator. It may not seem like it's a big deal because it's a spring game. A lot of them are free, and you're not going to make a ton of concessions or whatever, especially with the overhead you're going to have of people working. But in a place like Nebraska, who had the fourth most people attend a game for their spring game last year with over 64,000, and just a few years prior had a sellout crowd of over 84,000, that's a really big deal. A place like Nebraska, it's a blue blood program, okay? Flat out, I know they have been pretty bad for the last, 15, 20 years, maybe 25. But they are a blue blood program because of just how dominant they were in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. That is a hungry fan base that is constantly trying to consume that product of Nebraska football. And case in point, they had over 80,000 people show up to a spring game in year one of Matt Rhule coming off a losing season. I think they're 4-8. Then they had 60,000 last year, which, again, fourth most. The reason I think this is going to be interesting with the SEC is this. In the SEC, you have a lot of smaller towns that have smaller economic impacts than other big cities. Like, this is not Columbus, Ohio, right? This is not what's Athens, like, which is like the second or third biggest city, I think, in the state of Georgia, and has a thriving economy year round. Like in some cases, in like a place like Starkville, the 7 home games that they get, those have a huge economic impact. Just like Nebraska said, it is a big revenue generator, especially in the spring, where you will build large weekends based off of like having like a homecoming in the spring and having people come up. Like in Mississippi specifically, you'll have the Egg Bowl for baseball. They will usually have it that same weekend where they will have a night game on Saturday for the baseball matchup, whatever, and then they'll have the spring game for either school that afternoon. It's a big weekend event, and it's a big moneymaker. And I don't even know how much the ticket prices are for most of those people, but that's a big influx of money when you have 50, 60,000 people coming into your college campus to spend money. Now, the understanding of why he's doing it, I get. I mean, like if you're saying you're going to lose money and again, a revenue generating big deal in Lincoln, Nebraska, if you're going to risk that, right? And this is, he wouldn't have said it as like an empty threat, I don't think. Like, this is something that's clearly been talked about already, and you would have had to probably have some sign off from the athletic department or the school, because there's just no way you're going to be able to have that. There's no way the head coach is going to have that much of an impact just based off of his feelings about tampering in the portal, because there's so many other things and the domino effect of what's happening that he would also be impacting. The reason behind it, I understand. I really do. Because in this day and age of football, he's right. It's the wild, wild west. There are no rules. There's constant tampering. There's constant tampering. And you are going to see teams get desperate even more in the spring window. It's only 10 days. You're going to have injuries that are going to pile up from your 15 practices in the spring. You might have injuries in the spring game. Obviously, God forbid, you wouldn't want that to happen, but you're going to have them happen. And you're going to have some teams that are going to be left with, oh my gosh, we have got to figure out a way to get either more depth at this position, a position of need, whether it's also, a position of need for everyone, like the offensive and defensive line. And you also see in that spring window that's only 10 days long, the number and the inflated price for players that usually aren't as good, even with like the amassing of players that come out in December. You have less players coming out in the spring window, which means the demand for them, since the supply is shorter, the demand goes way up. I can tell you firsthand, there's a player out of Louisiana last year. It was actually from a MAC school. It was one of the directional mission schools. And he was between LSU and Miami. And LSU, they met with him. They thought they felt really good about him. They offered him a substantial amount of money because that's a position of need going to last year. The money he wanted would have been on par with him making more or as much as the highest paid player on the team, which at that time was their emotional leader and left tackle. LSU was like, we can't really do that, man. We can't justify giving you that amount of money. So he went to Miami and he got paid. Like, I don't know what kind of numbers he put up. He wasn't like an All-American, or I don't even know if he was All-Conference, but like I do know he got into a fight in the bowl game. But like in this window especially, it's almost like this shortened time period and timetable creates even more panic, greed, and the worst of what we see in the portal, if that makes sense. Like, the smaller window creates this smaller supply, a higher demand, and it to me brings out the worst in what we see in the portal. And that's tough to do because the portal itself is already a little bit of a cesspool and a hellscape for a lot of things. Now, I want to get into South Carolina specifically. We're going to do that after the break. So before we go to break, make sure you stay tuned. We're going to talk about how this affects South Carolina. And I'm going to tell you right now why I don't think that Shane Beamer would ever be the type of coach that would do that. And it's mainly because of his relationship, not with his team, not because of his feelings about the portal, but because of how he feels and what he has generated, cultivated, and built with the South Carolina fan base specifically. Now, we'll talk about all that and more when Locked On Gamecocks continues next. All right, we are back. We're going to get into more of the portal talk, like I said. Before we do, I want to give a quick shout out to our friends at Game Time. You guys have heard me talk about it before, like I said, and now is a better time than ever to get your tickets to anything. It doesn't have to be just a sporting event, to anything with Game Time. If you're looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Game Time Picks for a while now. Here's why I love it. The curated deals make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. I recently grabbed a super deal what they have for a prime seat. I did it for the Bama South Carolina game. Couldn't believe the value. It was a steal. The seat view feature is a game changer. Before I even hit buy, I can see exactly what my seat will look like in the venue. It is so reassuring. And the best part, told you about this before as well, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee and the best customer service in the game. If you find a better deal elsewhere, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. When I bought my tickets for the South Carolina Bama basketball game, the tickets were in my Apple Wallet or whatever within, I think, 7 minutes because I remember timing it. If you're ready to make your next event even better, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's get back to the topic at hand. And what we're talking about here is spring games and the potential for teams cutting them based on the transfer portal. Now, here's my biggest takeaway from this. Matt Rhule, whether you like him or not, I'm sure there's probably some South Carolina fans that probably have feelings towards Matt Rhule in some capacity just because he was with the Carolina Panthers. And so that's not even invalid, okay? But I will say he has been pretty spot on with his assessment of things since he's gone back to college, right? Like he has had when he I think like a year or two ago he brought up, he's like, hey, listen, the price for a portal quarterback, a quarterback out of the transfer portal is going to be around $1 million to $1.5 million. As we have seen, that number has climbed for elite talent already. Jackson Arnold, I can tell you right now, that's a guy that was around $1.2 million, I believe, for Auburn. You saw what Carson Beck got. He got $4 million to go to Miami. You guys didn't want to hear this, but I told you it was going to happen, and it all worked out just like we knew it would. But Lenoris, there was a package put together from Auburn's coaches for over $2 million, or maybe it was right at $2 million that they were going to offer Lenoris so he would go and maybe – transfer out of South Carolina and end up in the Plains. That didn't happen, obviously, but Matt Rhule has been pretty spot on with the way he's described stuff so far. Now, I say all that to also say this. I think the reason he's bringing this up has way less to do with him trying to pick up his ball and go home and be upset and say, we're not going to play because we're mad about tampering. I think what he's trying to do here is kind of speak about the problem through the media without speaking about the problem. Like, I mean, he essentially is. Like his comment of the word tampering doesn't exist anymore. It's just an absolute free, open, common market. I don't think the reason he wants to not play the spring game is because he's worried people are going to poach his players. I think he doesn't want to play the spring game because he thinks it could be a vessel and a catalyst for the idea of, hey, maybe more people will start doing this. And if you guys don't start taking it seriously and have some ground rules laid, like, again, it's wild, wild west. Nick Saban talked about this forever. Kiffin talked about it. I don't think those are maybe the two of the best voices people wanted to hear it from necessarily because, especially with Saban when he was a coach, people just the immediate response was, well, you've been paying players forever, whatever. Like, now that he's out of the game, people are starting to kind of heed more to the things he said and say, that's a really good point. Maybe the greatest college football coach of all time who's been involved in this game for 50 years knew what he was talking about. Isn't that a crazy concept to think about? But this is kind of what I think Matt Rhule is doing, where he's saying, listen, we need to figure something out. It's not going to get figured out unless there's some sort of dramatic change. Because right now the NCAA is not doing anything about it. Now, how this pertains to South Carolina, I don't think Shane Beamer is going to cut out a an event like the spring game and take that away from the fans. Now, South Carolina is not one of the teams I think that has like the highest turnout. I think last year they were right around 30,000, which is good, especially in the spring in Columbia when it's going to be hot as crap and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think he's a coach that's going to take that away from the fans. He knows what this team means to the fans. He also knows how much excitement's being built going into next season. So I don't think he would do that. I think what you will start to see is stuff like we saw with Ole Miss, where it's much less a game where you're going to line up and go play and blah, 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 and much more hey, here's an event, here's a spectacle. Y'all come out, let's have fun, see the players. They get to do all this like different fun stuff. And it's almost more like a Midnight Madness type deal you see with basketball where it's like, I think Ole Miss has a dunk contest, right? Like, we'll play 7-on-7. We're going to make sure no one gets hurt. We're going to have fun. We'll get the fans what they want. We'll get everyone out some game action, all that kind of stuff. And we'll just do all the other stuff behind the scenes in those 15 practices. We'll get some scrimmage work done in those. We'll get fundamentally sound and do all those things. And we'll get better as a football team and a football program before we head into summer and inevitably fall camp. But we're not going to put a bunch of stuff on tape. We're not going to put a bunch of like potential injuries on the table because the risk versus reward for a spring game especially is not great. I think you could see something like that. Last year, there were only 5 teams in the country that didn't play a spring game. I think that you could see more teams go that way. There was only one in the SEC, and it was Vanderbilt. I don't think Vanderbilt was worried about their players being poached. I think we'd all agree on that. But I do think that inevitably you might see some other coaches go to this. Here's the other part about with the SEC that makes it unique. In the SEC, and you guys know this as well as I do, just knowing the socioeconomic impact, for one, that it has on town. And Columbia is a capital city, so it's not as big of a deal here. But the socioeconomic impact it has on a fan, where you look at a place like Starkville, like I said, Tuscaloosa for like Alabama, a lot of those fan bases, this is really their only chance to go to games, to take a family of 4, to go to Tuscaloosa and see the campus and get to go see them run out of the tunnel and play a game, because the way that ticketing and prices have gotten so bad, so inconvenient for the consumer. Another reason to use Game Time app. But like going to a game and having to buy your tickets, figure out a place to park, what that's going to cost, get food inside or whatever, it has become increasingly more expensive, especially when you could sit at home in the AC and watch a game. So taking away a spring game is really taking away an opportunity for a lot of the fans to experience their favorite thing at least once in the year, because they might not be able to do that during the season. So I think for that reason as well, I don't think that Shane Beamer is ever going to take this away from the fans. And that sounds dramatic, but as you guys know, I'm already dramatic. I don't think he'll ever take that away from the fans. I think you will see someone like Shane Beamer who is so in tune with trying to make his players happy, the fans happy, and really like return the joy I think he gets from coaching this program and leading this program to the fan base. So I don't think you're going to see South Carolina ever cancel their spring game. I do think that Shane Beamer is one of the few coaches that can see the problems we're having with the portal, the problems we're having with NIL, the obstacles and roadblocks that do like lie in the way of the sport that we used to love, and also try to figure out a way like, hey, we know there's an issue. How do we address this? Because here's the last thing about it that I'll say. Shane Beamer also knows the guys he has in those 4 walls in that locker room, he wants them as committed to him as he is to them. And outside of a guy like Juice Wells, and there's a couple other examples, maybe, that's a guy that's saying, listen, like, we want to give you every opportunity. That's why we're not going to get more players in the portal in the spring. You know what I mean? Like we want everyone in these 4 walls and in this roster that's a part of this team to know that we want to give you every opportunity possible. So if we don't play a spring game, those players don't get that opportunity. And I think that's just, it speaks again to how much of a player's coach Shane Beamer really is, and especially how much he cares about this fan base in everything that he does. Now, that is all about the spring game stuff. I hope it was somewhat entertaining, or I don't know. I know it's not specifically something that happened in South Carolina, but it was something that really caught my eye. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now we're going to come back, talk a little baseball before we close out today's show. So make sure you stick around for that. Okay. Hold on. We're just breaking news. Okay. So let's get into the sport I feel like I probably know the most about. And I'm very excited for this season. Very excited for this season. College baseball, opening day. We're about, I think tomorrow will be 10 days out from opening day, which is awesome. My grandpa used to always say this. I used to love it. Today's the day the world starts over. Today's opening day. There's this very fresh, exciting feeling every time a new baseball season starts. You get 55, 60 games, lot to work out. And this is like a return to glory season, I think, for South Carolina. You went out and made a great hire. You got Pulmonary, national championship winning coach, former guy at LSU, guy that knows how to evaluate talent, develop talent, and all those things that we want to see at Founders Park. I'm not going to get too into the roster because I don't know enough about the roster yet. We will see how that all pans out. I do want to give you an update because on Tuesday, the day we're recording this, they did have a scrimmage at Founders Park. It was a 6-inning scrimmage and kind of went like I think the main reason was they had 4 pitchers they wanted to showcase. They all threw 3 innings. They played starters and went through all that kind of stuff. So it was a 3-2 final. I don't know which side won, but there are 4 pitchers that pitch. And guys, get excited. Yet another sport that I'm going to mess up names on. Jackson Soucie, Soucie. Correct me in the comments. You know I love you guys for it. Ryder Garino, who we're going to talk about in a second. Cooper Parks and Caleb Jones. Now, there's a lot of firepower on this team, I do think. Ethan Petrie is awesome. I'm so pumped that he came back because that's a guy that I think would have been a high-round draft pick. As somebody that played college baseball, there is nothing quite like a college baseball season. It is so damn fun. It's like whether it's going out to like a game for a midweek and like the big showdowns from the weekends and all that kind of stuff. This team, I'm trying to temper my expectations because it's the first part of the what do you call it? It's the first year with Maneri, and you never know what's going to happen. By the way, side note, this is pretty cool. So I played baseball at Middle Tennessee State out of high school, hated it, left, went to Georgia College in Milledgeville, Georgia. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's fair. It's where Roethlisberger got in all that trouble. That's Milledgeville. We played in the same conference as Francis Marion and USC Aiken. Those were our 2 big conference rivals. Nathan Belcher, who played at South Carolina, he's now the head coach there. So small world kind of with all that. So in the scrimmage today, this was what they did. They did 4 pitchers. They all threw 3 innings apiece, and they're trying to work out some stuff. Here's the one, the 2 pitchers that this is from the Big Spur. Great job over there at 247. They do a fantastic job. They brought up 2 guys specifically. Jackson Soucie, which I'm sure I'm saying wrong. A lefty that is going to sit around 90, which is fine. Like fine. 6'5", 230. I don't believe he's a power pitcher, obviously, if you're only throwing 90, but he is a fastball change. At 6'5", 230 and a lefty, that's a massive get. No matter where you are, I am shocked that he's not in the actual it didn't get drafted. I know there's only 20 rounds now. He's a JUCO prospect, but my goodness, that's a kid that you went and got from Wabash Valley JUCO, and he's from Chicago, Illinois. 6'5", 230 as a lefty that's a hoss. That is a big, big deal and a prospect that will at the very least, a lefty throwing 90 will always get looks from Major League Baseball. Always, always, always. He was fine. Said he faced the backups through 3 shutout innings, gave up only 1 hit, so he was more than fine. He did issue three walks, which I hate. 1 hit batter and 2 walks. He also struck out 1, but a kid throwing 90 with his backup pitch being a what do you call it? A changeup. Love that. That kid will find a way to get on the bump a lot this season. Here's the one that really stood out to me, and that's Ryder Garino. Ryder Garino, I think he's a true freshman. I know he's a freshman in general, but 6'5", I think he's like 180, 190. He's a beanpole a little bit, but throws hard, low 90s, sat around 92. They said he hit 92 in every single inning he pitched today, and he had to face the actual the starters, right? He struck out 6 in 3 innings, including Ethan Petrie on a 92 elevated fastball that he got up in the zone. Love that. Fastball slider. He's a young kid. That's a kid that you could see. I don't know what Paul Marini's going to do with him. Again, like I said, don't know enough about the team. Fascinated to learn as much as possible, especially with opening day 10 days away. But that's a kid. Two kids at 6'5" off the mound. It just feels like they're throwing to you from the living room. Like they coming down, especially from a lefty. What I mean by throwing to you out of the living room means like they're just right in front of you. Like they're so close to home plate because of how big and lanky and long they are. So their release point is just closer to you. Being able to, it's only one outing, but striking out 6 in 3 innings when it's the starters, that's a tremendous job from Garino. So a lot to learn from this. I will tell you this real quick. Here's the stats that they have compiled from the first 4 scrimmages. This is up until January 31st. Here's what you got. Ryan Bakes hit 364. I believe 364 is like, I used to know all the averages in my head. 364 is something like 3 of 11. No, 4 of 11 maybe. Anyway, he, with a home run, RBI, 4 walks, 4 Ks. Let's see here. Not a ton from a lot of the players. The Henry Kazmer kid, 300, 2 doubles, RBI, hit by pitch, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. This is the biggest thing. I remember talking about this early in the, I think, summer. We're talking about there were some of the players they were recruiting. But you got to cut, like the middle infield, I think it was, or from second to third, so second, short, and third, the amount of strikeouts, I think it was like over 30.4% of their at-bats combined were strikeouts. Got to figure out a way to at least put the ball in play. When you put the ball in play, good things happen for the most part. Listen, it's a game of failure. 300 gets you the Hall of Fame. We all know that. But you have got to figure out a way to cut down on the strikeouts. You cannot at least figure out a way to put runs across if you're striking out. You have to figure out a way to get on base. So there's no numbers that are really blowing you away. Ethan Petrie. In 4 scrimmages, he's hitting 500 with 3 home runs, 7 RBIs, 2 walks. That's pretty damn good. Pitchers, this is before today. Obviously, Garino, so he had 2 innings pitched, 2 hits, a walk, and a strikeout. There's some good numbers here. Now, it seems like the walks have been a little bit of an issue. I'll go through some of the numbers that are jumping out. Like Roman Kimball, 2 innings pitched, 300 runs. He had a walk and 2 hit batters. Eli Jerzembek, 2.1 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, 5 walks. You got Wyatt Evans with 3 walks and 2 innings. Dylan Eskew with 4 walks and 3 innings. They've got to figure out a way to get that down. You'll hear me say this 1,000 times this baseball season. Leadoff walks score 63% of the time. That is a stat that my college baseball coach told me, 20 years ago. Ugh. And it still sits with me to this day. So got to figure out a way to cut down on that. But I mean, it's an exciting year. It's going to be an exciting year for baseball. I love the fact that they're kind of flying under the radar. You're starting to see all these like top 25s come out, and you're going to have, I think, between 8 to 11 SEC teams in every single one of those. They're going to be very top heavy. You're going to see A&M is around number 1 in almost every single preseason mag and preseason publication. LSU is right in there in the top 5 in every single one. You're going to see Tennessee, the defending national champs, up there. Texas should be good because they got Snagel from A&M. Florida's always good. Mississippi State should bounce back. Ole Miss usually has a team. Kentucky lost a ton, but they will be up there. Georgia should be really good. They should always be good. There's just so much talent in that state that I don't understand how they're not good. But South Carolina is you heard me say this a couple weeks ago with football recruiting. They're kind of lying in the weeds. They're around 9th or 10th in the SEC, but they should have the type of talent where they could host a regional. And we all know if you can host a regional, put you in a good position to win, host a super regional, and figure out a way to get back to Omaha. And I think that's what this fan base really wants. And we're 10 days out, so it should be a lot of fun. We'll, I'm sure, cover a lot of it during the season. So I hope all of you had enjoyed the episode. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your evening or afternoon or wherever you're listening to this. Be safe, be good, all those things. When you're done listening to this episode, making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen every day, make sure you tune into our buddy Barrett Sallee's Locked On Smothered and Covered podcast as well. Barrett Sallee, you know him from covering college football, and I've dropped his name on here before. You now know him as the host of the pre- and post-game show for the Atlanta Braves. Very happy for my friend Barrett. That's awesome. He texted me about it this morning. Couldn't be happier for him. He's a great dude. Make sure you go check him out. Or if you want to watch the Braves game, check him out there as well. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you all tomorrow. Go Cox.